Attacking f2/f7. f2 and f7 are two of the most vulnerable squares on the chessboard, as it is initially only defended by the king and thus become a great target for tactics. In this position our pieces are well developed while black's ones are uncoordinated. Because of this, white has an unbelievable tactic. Knight takes e5. If black takes the queen, white will take the pawn on f7, and it is checkmate next move. If black takes the knight, well, we just smash the h5 bishop. Here's another example. The f7 pawn is being attacked by two pieces. White brings the third piece in, threatening checkmate, while pressuring this f7 pawn. Black is f***ed. Alright, now pause this video and solve this puzzle. The solution is... Alright, back to the chess. You go queen here to attack both the rook and pawn. Black moves the king over to defend, and you play knight here, triple attacking the f7 pawn. KO. Attacking the castled king. More often than not, beginners believe that once the king is castled, it is safe forever. This line of thinking, simply put, is bullshit. Take this example. This king is feeling a little tight, so white sacrifice the knight, and then mate the king with the queen. In this position, white is down a rook, and black has a checkmate in one. Unfortunately for black, white is a chess thugs viewer, once in a blue moon watches Gotham chess, and has practiced the art of mating. So he sacrifices the queen, and delivers a checkmate in 2 moves. Now what would you do in this position? I'll give you 3 seconds. Oops, time's up. Time does fly, doesn't it? Here white sacrifices the knight, and then delivers a brutal rook checkmate. Back rank. The back rank is one of the tactical motifs that should always be on your mind when your opponent's king is chilling in the last row of the board. In this example, black is feeling all cocky as he has too many queens, and is about to secure the W. But white really says hold my beer and drops his queen on d8. The queen quickly disappears, but so is any of black's winning chances. In this other position, if there is no rook on h8, rook to d8 would be checkmate. What does that mean? That means we play rook to d8 anyway. Just kidding. That means the h8 rook is too busy protecting the back rank and cannot defend this bishop. So we just take it. Alright boys, exercise time. What do you do here? Welp, you just take the knight, cause if black takes back you checkmate him on d8. Zwischenzug. Yeah, it sounds fancy, but it's just a slick in-between move that throws your opponent off guard, giving you the upper hand in the end. Here's an example. Most of you probably see the fork knight to e7. A bunch of you low elo brains though would take the queen right afterward. Funny enough, this is completely losing, as your opponent can zwischenzug you, not taking the knight right away but playing an in-between move. Rook takes g3 first, and then takes the knight. So instead of taking the queen, you gotta do a zwischenzug yourself. Rook takes h3. If your opponent moves the queen away, you have the brutal checkmate. Rook takes h7, king takes, rook to h3 checkmate. So black has to play h3 to prevent this mate and loses the queen. Easy, right guys? This is so cake even my grandma can solve it. Alright, what do you do in this position? Wait, wrong one. This is too hard. This one. Well, you can just capture the queen and call it a day. However, you might as well play an in-between move. Knight takes the h6 check, and then takes the queen. Clearance sacrifice. The clearance sacrifice, or just clearance, is a tactical motif in which a piece is sacrificed to free a square that it is occupying or that it is controlling. In this example, white would like to play knight to f7 mate. However, the c7 queen is controlling that square, so we play bishop to b6, and either the queen takes the bishop, and we deliver mate with the knight, or he moves the queen, and we take the d8 rook, resulting in us being up in exchange. In this position, our rook on d5 is trapped, and unfortunately we would also love to have a knight there, as that would fork the c7 queen, and the f6 rook. So we play rook takes knight with the rook, and once black recaptures with a pawn we play knight to d5, and no matter what black does, we regain our lost exchange, and we get rid of our trapped rook. Here's a take-home exercise if you want one. Decoy/deflection. This tactical motif relies on baiting your opponent with your own move, in order to reach a tactically favorable position. Here we have an example of a deflection. In this position we can play rook to h7 to deflect the h8 rook from the back rank, because if it takes our h7 rook, we deliver mate with our other rook. This one is an example of a decoy. We want to promote, but we can't due to the pin. We also notice that the black king is in the same column as our pawn. With this we arrive at the solution. Queen to g1 check. After black takes the g1 queen, we promote the pawn to a queen with a check, and after the king moves we capture black's queen, winning the game. Now time for you to put this into practice. Defense. Sometimes you are losing, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. It is during these times that we should search for tactics that allow us to equalize or draw the game. Here we have such an example. White has a queen, and is going to win on the next move. However, we don't let it happen, and play rook f6 check. Once white takes the rook, it is a stalemate, baby. Now look at this position. It seems like taking the f4 queen is black's only option. However, then black would be down 2 pawns and lose. So black sacrifices the queen and plays the killer move king to a8. White has to take the queen cause otherwise the white queen is poof. And it's a stalemate. Now here's an exercise. What would you do, motherf***? The best move here is king to h1 cause if black pushes the f-pawn, white just takes with the bishop, and if black takes back it's a stalemate. Desperado. Desperado is a piece desperately grabbing other pieces because it's gonna die anyway. In this position our knight is trapped, no matter what we do the knight is gonna die so we sacrifice it for the h6 pawn to at least get a pawn. This one is super sick. If white takes the bishop black will just take back with the knight and equalize. What would you do here? In this position white plays the savage move bishop to a6 attacking the pawn. When black takes the bishop, his pawn structure is ruined. Then white just takes the knight, opening up the attack from the rook. Discovered attack. Discovered attack happens when you move a piece out of the way, and the piece behind it messes your opponent up. This is especially useful when the attack is a check. Take this example. White plays knight to e8 check and captures the c7 queen. Now look at this position. Here we can see that the queen is in the same diagonal as our bishop, so again, if we move the knight, we attack the queen. So we play knight to g6, creating a discovered attack on the queen, and also attacking the rook. Double check. If a check can get your opponent in trouble, then a double check leads to double the trouble. The only way to stop a double check is by moving the king, which is super useful in some cases. This is such an example. White is about to lose, but he realizes he can take the pawn on b7, creating a double check. The king must go inside, and when he does, white finishes the game by another double check, rook to b8. In this position, the rook is on the same file as the black king but if we check him normally, it will just go back to g8. So we play knight to f6 double check, and mate. En passant. En passant, sometimes called en peasant, is a special rule in chess. It consists of capturing an adjacent pawn that just moved 2 squares. A lot of the times beginners forget that this rule exists, and it could be the difference between winning and losing. Look at this position. Here black tries to save himself with c5. If we don't do anything, black's king is going to escape to a7, and then to a8. However, white plays en passant to take the c5 pawn and checkmates black. In this position black plays a5 trying to run with the pawn, as he knows that if he didn't do anything, both pawns would be lost. However, unfortunately for him, we can take the pawn with en passant, and our passed pawn is faster than his b-pawn. Endgame tactic. The endgame tactic is a tactic in the endgame, and it is exactly what the Avengers used to smack Thanos up. Here we have an endgame where both sides are equal in terms of material. However, we have a brilliant move. Bishop takes a6. Once black recaptures we push the b-pawn, and black's pieces can't prevent us from queening. Here's another example. Black is preparing to f*** our pawns, and we can do nothing about that. Or can we? If you open your eyes for 2 seconds, you will surely spot the incredible rook takes h7. If black takes back the rook, we play bishop f5 attacking the king and the c2 rook simultaneously. Exchange sacrifice. The exchange sacrifice happens when you sacrifice a rook for a knight or bishop. Here we have such an example. White has the amazing move knight to d5, forking the king, the rook and the knight. There are 2 problems. First, the white king is in check. Second, the black knight is controlling the d5 square, and our knight can't really go there yet. However, we can temporarily sacrifice the exchange with rook takes f4. After black takes our rook, we deliver a check on d5 with our knight and regain the lost rook. In this position we can do something similar. We notice that something is fishy and come up with rook takes f7, baiting the king to come to f7 in order to fork the king and the rook, gaining a piece. Fork. A fork is simply when your piece is attacking 2 or more pieces at the same time. Look at this example. We can play knight to d5, attacking both rooks at the same time, and one of them will fall. Here if we don't do anything, black will start checking us and probably achieve a draw, or even a better position. However, we can hit him with queen takes b7, and after the king takes our queen we can fork the king and the f7 queen with knight d6, going to a winning endgame. Hanging piece. A hanging piece is a piece that can be taken right away, and is completely defenseless. However, even though you can take it, doesn't mean you automatically should. Here you can take the c6 knight as it is hanging. However, if you look closely, we have a way better move. Queen takes h7. Once the black king recaptures, we mate him by playing rook h3. In this position, some of you might be tempted to take the bishop, but don't be hasty. If you spend a little more time you can find the fork that comes with knight f7, winning the queen on the spot. Try to solve this position by applying what you have learned so far. The move is pawn to b4, followed by knight to c2, putting both the knight and the bishop under attack, and eventually making one of them disappear. Interference. Interference consists of moving a piece between 2 or more attacking pieces. In this position the d5 rook is very well protected, so we play knight to e5, blocking the queen's line of sight. Vulnerable king. Whenever a king is out in the open, you should look for ways to smash him. Here's an example. Here you should search for checks, as the king is almost dead. If you spend some time and calculate accurately, you can find a mating sequence that arises from the king's vulnerability. Here's another position. We play bishop to d4 check, and after the king takes the bishop we fork the king and the queen with knight to e6. Windmill. The windmill is one of the most brutal tactics in the history of chess. Now take a look at this position. Black thinks he's Gucci because he's up so much material, but white really says nah, I just win, and plays this series of moves. X-ray. An X-ray is when you attack or defend a piece through another piece. Here's an example. In this position we can play queen h7 check, because the h3 rook is also attacking h7 through the h6 rook. After black recaptures with the rook, we take back with our own rook delivering mate. Here's another example. In this position we again have our rook x-raying the h7 pawn, thus we can snag that pawn with bishop takes h7 and black can't recapture, otherwise he loses the rook. Alright, here's an exercise for you. I won't tell you what the winning move is, but it involves a bishop check on a7. Mating net. A mating net is what Spider-Man does when he is trying to get some bit. Just kidding. A mating net is when the opponent's king is trapped in an inescapable mating sequence that will happen either now or soon, basically being trapped in a net. Here's an example. We play queen to h5 and the net is set. No matter what black does, we will mate on h7. In this one white plays queen to h6, and the mate on g7 is unstoppable. Overloading. Overloading is when a piece has too much to defend at once, so you attack it and it stops protecting at least one piece. Take this example. Here the black queen is overloaded, so we take advantage of that and play d6, forcing the queen to stop defending one of the horses. Here the pawn is overloaded, so we simply take the bishop with our knight, and then take the f5 knight. Now try to solve this position. Pawn promotion. Pawn promotion is a tactic that contains a pawn promotion as it is a vital component. Here's an example. In this position we play rook takes b2 and then sacrifice our queen on c8. Finally we push the d-pawn, and it is impossible to stop its promotion. We win the game. Here's another example. We want to create a passed pawn, as that would guarantee the win. So we play the amazing b6. After black takes the pawn, we sacrifice another pawn, and push the one that is not blocked. Perpetual check. This is a tactic where you check your opponent's king to death, and he gets so bored that he agrees to a draw. This is especially good when you're losing. In this position, black is seriously down on material, but he decides to lose more material to deliver a beautiful perpetual check. Pin. A pin is what happens when you attack a piece and there is a more valuable piece behind it, so now his ass can't move and is stuck, which is what you can use to either apply more pressure or gobble the piece up. Here the f6 knight is pinned by the bishop, so we just need to play e5 and we win a piece. Here's another position. In this case we can't apply any meaningful pressure to the f6 knight, however we can take advantage of the fact that it can't move by playing rook takes h7 check. Black has to recapture the h7 rook, losing the e7 queen. Exercise time. Solve this position. Queen sacrifice. Queen sacrifice is a sacrifice of the wife. Usually she ain't gonna be happy, but it's worth it, because you're gonna be Gucci after the win. Here is an example. In this position we can hit black with the incredible queen takes h7 check. If black takes with the king, we play rook h4 mate. If black takes with the knight, we play knight f7 mate. Here's another example. Here we can apply this motif in conjunction with the decoy and fork that we studied earlier. Queen takes e8. With this black is forced to recapture our queen, setting himself to a fork. Knight to c7 check. Removal of the defender. Have you ever gotten a seemingly winning position that is in fact not winning because there is a defender that is still causing a ton of problems? Well, just smoke his ass. In this position we have just that. White wants to checkmate on h7 but can't due to the f6 knight. Thus, we simply take it. After black takes back with the queen, we finally mate on h7. Here we have a similar position. White sees the fork on d7 but can't play it because of the c5 knight. Thus, we simply sacrifice the exchange, and once black recaptures, we play knight to d7 check, forking the king and the queen. Now how would you win here? Sacrifice. A sacrifice is of course when a piece gives up its life so you can win. Here's an example. In this position we can sacrifice the queen by playing queen to a6. If black captures the queen, we recapture with the knight and deliver mate. If he doesn't recapture, then we either mate on b7 or a7. Here's another position. Here we can play rook takes on f6, removing the defender of h7, and if black naively captures our rook, then we play queen takes h7 with mate. Simplification. Simplification happens when you look at your position and realize that you're winning, but there is just too much going on the board. Sometimes it's good to even sacrifice some material to make the position simpler. This is especially useful in a blitz game where mistakes can easily happen. Look at this position. Here white is completely winning. However, in time trouble that knight can start checking forever, and perhaps even capture your rook somehow. To save yourself the trouble, just capture the damn knight and go into an easily winning king and pawn endgame. Here's another example. Here you can easily win by attacking the pawn slowly, however why waste time and trouble thinking about that? Just sacrifice your bishop for the a6 pawn and promote the c pawn. Can you simplify this position? Skewer. A skewer is when you attack a valuable piece, and there is a piece behind it. By doing this, you force the most valuable piece to move, and you capture the other one. In this position, the knight and the queen are on the same file. Due to this we play rook g1, skewering the queen and the knight. Since the queen is of higher value it has to move, leaving the knight to die. Smothered mate. A smothered mate happens when pieces simply ain't good at understanding personal space and end up standing just way too close to the poor king, who just ends up smothered with nowhere to escape. In this position, we just play the simple knight f7, which is a smothered mate due to the annoying g8 rook. Stalemate. Stalemate happens when one of the players does not have any legal moves and is not in check. When that happens, the game ends in a draw, and you end up with a $1,000 bill for a broken laptop. This stalemate rule allows for what is called a stalemate trap. In this position, white is one move away from getting checkmated. There's only one problem: white's king is stuck and can't move anywhere, so white plays the most big brain move of all time. Rook takes g7. Black can't take the rook because it'd be a stalemate, so the rook just keeps checking the king until it's a perpetual check. Trapped piece. A trapped piece is a piece that is, well, trapped. There is not much else to it. In this position, the black bishop does not have a lot of safe squares and is prone to being trapped, so we play g4. Forcing it to go to g6, and then we play f4, gaining a tempo by attacking the knight. Once the knight leaves, we play f5, trapping the bishop. Here's another example. We block all the escape squares of the knight by playing bishop to c5. After that, we move the king closer and the knight is gone. Under promotion. If you get your pawn to the other side of the board and automatically get super wet just thinking about promoting to a queen, I got news for you. You want to slow down, broski, because look at what happens when you think and do what is called an under promotion.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Oh, excuse me. I shouldn't have used such language. Oh, right, that's what I'm talking about. Ayo! Boom, boom, boom. Oh, yeah.
In this position, if we promote to a queen, black will be a pawn up. The game will probably end in a draw, but we would suffer. However, if we promote to a knight, we fork the king and the queen, and we emerge a knight up in an easily winning endgame. Here is another tricky example. If we promote to a queen, we stalemate, so we promote to a rook and checkmate after black moves.